He was just 15 when he broke into NASA's network. A high school student with a dial-up connection, an old computer, and more curiosity than fear. In a single night, he slipped past digital walls built by the most powerful government on Earth. And by the time investigators realized what had happened, it was already too late. This is the story of the teenager who hacked his way into history. At the end of the 1990s, the world was just beginning to move online. Computers were entering homes, connecting through modems that screamed and whirred like machines from a different planet. For most kids, the internet was a place for games or chat rooms. For others, a playground of endless exploration. Among them was a quiet boy named Jonathan James. Online, he was known simply as C0MRADL. Jonathan grew up in Florida, obsessed with how things worked. He loved taking apart electronics, radios, phones, computers, just to see what was inside. His parents saw him as a curious kid, maybe a bit too curious. At school, he wasn't the most popular, but he was the one teachers called when the network went down. By 15, he already understood computers better than most adults around him. But curiosity has a dangerous edge. To a young mind, the internet felt like a giant locked door, and every password was a key waiting to be found. Jonathan wasn't in it for money or fame. He wanted to prove to himself that he could do it, that he could go where no one else dared. One night in 1999, he decided to push further. Through a government contractor's network, he found a back door into NASA's computers. He discovered a server holding code for part of the International Space Station's life support system, software worth more than $1.7 million. For several weeks, he quietly copied files, intercepted emails, and downloaded source code onto his own computer at home. No destruction, no ransom, just pure exploration. When NASA engineers noticed unusual activity, they went into lockdown. They shut down their entire network for 21 days to investigate, costing the agency tens of thousands of dollars. And in a dark room somewhere in suburban Florida, a teenager realized the scale of what he had done. He hadn't just hacked a school computer or a small website. He had broken into NASA and the Department of Defense. Investigators from NASA and the Pentagon teamed up with the FBI to trace the breach. Every line of code left a digital footprint, and eventually, the trail led to Jonathan's internet provider. One morning, federal agents stormed his house. Guns drawn, computers seized. His parents, terrified, watched as their teenage son was taken away by men in suits. To the outside world, it was shocking. The idea that a 15-year-old could infiltrate systems used by astronauts and soldiers. The media dubbed him a cyber prodigy and a digital outlaw. But to Jonathan, it was suddenly very real. He wasn't a superhero in a movie. He was a kid in trouble. He was charged with multiple counts of computer intrusion, making him the first juvenile in the United States to be convicted of a federal cybercrime. In court, prosecutors argued that his actions endangered national security. Jonathan, on the other hand, insisted that he never meant to harm anyone. He was simply curious, and maybe too confident in his own skills. He eventually pled guilty and was sentenced to house arrest, probation, and time in a juvenile detention center. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But Jonathan's case became a turning point in how society viewed young hackers. Before him, hacking was seen as mischief, kids testing limits. After him, it was treated as a national threat. Still, Jonathan wasn't alone in this strange new world of digital prodigies turned criminals. A few years earlier, another teenager had gained notoriety, Kevin Mitnick. Though older, Mitnick's story inspired a generation of young hackers. He famously broke into major companies like Nokia, Motorola, and Sun Microsystems, not to steal money, but to explore networks and collect code. To many, he became a legend, hunted by the FBI for years. To others, he was a cautionary tale of what happens when curiosity crosses the line. Then came Adrian Lamo, the so-called homeless hacker. Lamo roamed from city to city with nothing but a laptop and an internet connection. He infiltrated systems at the New York Times, Microsoft, and Yahoo, often leaving messages behind to alert administrators of their security flaws. Lamo would later become infamous for outing U.S. Army analyst Chelsea Manning, who leaked classified documents to WikiLeaks. He saw himself as a moral hacker, but the world saw something more complicated, a mix of genius, arrogance, and betrayal. These stories of James, Mitnick, Lamo became modern myths. They weren't thieves in the traditional sense. They were explorers of a new frontier, testing what the digital world could withstand. But as the internet grew, so did the stakes. Governments realized that a teenager with a computer could do more damage than a trained soldier with a gun. After his release, Jonathan James tried to rebuild his life. He stayed away from hacking, at least publicly, and started focusing on privacy and security. But the label of the NASA hacker never went away. Every time his name appeared online, it came with the same story. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape his digital past. In 2007, several years after his conviction, James's name resurfaced during an investigation into a massive data breach at major U.S. retailers. He denied any involvement, but when FBI agents visited him again, he felt the weight of the past closing in. Soon after, Jonathan took his own life. In a letter found afterward, he wrote that he had lost faith in the justice system and believed he would always be treated as a criminal. He was just 24 years old. His death sent shockwaves through the hacking community. Many saw him as a victim of a system that didn't understand what hacking really was. Curiosity turned into crime by outdated laws. Others saw it as a tragic reminder that talent without guidance can self-destruct. Jonathan James became a symbol, the brilliant kid who flew too close to the digital sun. Since then, the world of hacking has evolved. Today's young hackers are often found long before they break the law. Many are recruited into bug bounty programs or cybersecurity teams, where companies pay them to find vulnerabilities legally. Governments even run competitions to discover the next generation of cyber defenders. In some ways, society learned from what happened to Jonathan James. Instead of punishing curiosity, it's now being redirected. But that doesn't mean the danger is gone. Every year, teenagers still make headlines for breaching corporations, leaking databases, or taking down networks for fun. Some are driven by ideology, others by boredom, and some by the same spark that drove Comrade, the thrill of discovery. This is Data Heist, the dark side of data. Subscribe for more digital heists from the dark side of our connected world.